I moved to New York to become an artist. I know, cliche. Everyone moves to New York to become an artist or an actor or a singer or to find themselves or whatever. I'm not going to try and tell you I was any different than they are or were or will be. I moved to New York. I was going to paint and be famous and become filthy, stinking rich. That was the plan. Not a very good plan, was it? My parents gave me $1,000 a month to live on, which is not much in New York City. How much anywhere? It barely covered rent for the tiny apartment I lived in, and the remainder wouldn't really buy me food. I had to find a job, and fast, which was also not easy in New York City. Not easy anywhere. It would seem that every job applicant was a wide-eyed, struggling artist from a small town in Ohio with no formal education and a laughable resume. At least, that's who I was. I started working in a flower shop. I swept the floors. I'm not joking. Sweeper, minimum wage. Everyone always says to follow your dreams, but nobody ever realizes how hard that truly is. Aubrey wants to pursue her dreams of becoming an artist, but she soon realizes that that's harder than she thinks. The Days of Peanut Butter and Honey Sandwiches by Bridget Grace Sheaf. The biggest problem, in my mind, was food. At home, my mother was always making us try new foods and fusing cultures together. There were times when we were forced to try Italian meatball tacos and kung pao cabbage. It's worse than it sounds, believe me. Mostly, we had excellent food though, with brilliant flavors and textures and combinations of flavors and textures that were all appealing to me. College student food really didn't sound that good to me. I mean, I didn't know macaroni and cheese came in boxes. Apparently, noodles in styrofoam cups heated to lukewarm in a microwave count as an entire meal. It was at this moment that I discovered the peanut butter and honey sandwich. Now, the peanut butter and honey sandwich is not your traditional sandwich. Most people go with the standard pairing of peanut butter and jelly, but that was just a little too normal for me. Plus, honey never goes bad. It's both timeless and incapable of being spoiled. The sweet, sugary consistency of the honey doesn't overwhelm the creaminess of the peanut butter, but it sparkles through with a liquid, golden flavor that you just can't hate. I thought it was brilliant. Here was a traditional sandwich modified and made completely my own. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches. I lived off peanut butter and honey sandwiches for weeks. They were cheap, easy to make, and one step above your traditional dorm food. I was taking an art class a few blocks from my apartment. I walked in with a mixture of both excitement and terror. I sat down at an easel and started to look at the people around me. They all looked so much older than I was. I knew they had to be my same age, but they all looked so mature and focused. Some of them had that look on their face that so clearly said, this class is a joke. The first assignment was to paint a tree. Paint a tree. Perfect. Simple. I would show the instructor what I could do. So I started painting a tree. But it wasn't just any tree. I made the perfect tree. I thought of everything. The roots popping up and out of the ground. The sunlight coming through the branches. I even added a pretty good bird to one of those. At the end of class, my instructor walked around, slowly examining each painting, not saying a word. When he got to mine, he stopped. He seemed to be standing there, and during the entire rosary I was saying in my head, praying that he would like it. He coughed slightly, looked at me, and said, unimpressive. You know, there were days after that class that I wanted to go back home to Ohio more than anything. I wanted to see my parents and sleep in my old room. It was on those days that I hated peanut butter and honey sandwiches. I mean, who was I kidding? Put one sweet, sticky substance on top of another sweet, sticky substance, slap them on two lousy pieces of bread, and declared myself a chef. I wasn't a chef. I was a 12-year-old playing house. Sometimes I couldn't even swallow my sandwich. I just left it on a plate, walked away. I couldn't eat, I couldn't paint. I just kept hearing a cough and the word unimpressive replaying in my head over and over again. I wasn't an artist. I was a 4th grader, doodling with crayons and finger paints. I almost didn't go to work or class after that, but I forced myself to get out of bed. I got dressed and made another stupid peanut butter and honey sandwich. I sat at my easel in class and didn't look at anyone. I waited to hear what the humiliation was ahead of me for that day. Then I would just get through with it. The instructor said that for the next few weeks we would be painting something that we found beautiful. Great, that was specific. Thanks. I knew exactly what to do. Not. I was so mad at the end of class. I slammed the door behind me on my way out. Beauty is so arbitrary. What does that even mean? I was still steaming when I got back to my apartment. I flopped down on my bed and glared angrily at the ceiling. Beauty. Something we found beautiful. I thought for a long time. I just laid there, thinking. Must have dozed off at some point, because all of a sudden I look up and it was time for dinner. I groggily walked out of the kitchen and slathered peanut butter on some bread. I almost didn't add honey. It was an extra step, almost unnecessary. Then I looked at the honey in its ridiculously shaped bottle. It looked like a bear and had a moronic smile pasted on its face. It was then that I really looked at the honey. It was the color of sand glistening in the sun, the color of sunlight glinting on the water. It reminded me so much of the sun. I picked up the bottle and really studied it. The honey had preserved bubbles in its thick, gooey liquid. It looks like champagne, like a picture of champagne, frozen in time. Then I looked at the peanut butter. The ridges and the hills of the creamy spread gave the whole sandwich a swirling effect. When you added the honey, it was like adding water to a thirsty earth, letting the river flow through its mountains. It was pretty clear that I had lost it at that point. There I was, standing in a tiny kitchen, in a tiny apartment, in the middle of this huge city, staring at 2 slices of bread, thinking about my potential sandwich. It would be beautiful. Peanut butter and honey sandwich would represent something that I had made, something that I had created. My parents weren't around. No one was going to do this for me, and I wasn't going to let them. All of a sudden, I was painting a picture of a peanut butter and honey sandwich, finding the perfect light in the dingy kitchen to accentuate my creation. When I had finished, I fell into the bed, sticky, sweaty, and exhausted. This time, when I went to class, I felt like a moron. I had painted a picture of a sandwich. It was pretty clear that my instructor was going to have me institutionalized. At the very least, he would kick me out of class. Instead, came and stood behind me and looked at my painting. As I waited, I decided, I don't care what he thinks. I made this. This is my painting of a peanut butter and honey sandwich, and he can't take that away from me. Surprisingly, my instructor looked at me and said, "Good. It's original. I knew you could do this." It was all I could do not to hug him. I practically skipped home, but I composed myself. After all, I was in New York City. I was going to paint and be famous. The first thing I did was make a peanut butter and honey sandwich. Why not? I figured I deserved one.